Welcome to Group 3's presentation regarding serving special user groups through information organization. This presentation focuses on users with low-level digital literacy skills and users with digital access impediments. The authors are Jacqueline Goldman, Jamie Hooper, Christine Schaefer, and Sawyer White. The speech is delivered by Sawyer White. In libraries today, digital catalogs, search engines, and other modern-day conveniences are ever present. Indeed, these advancements in information technology are now more pervasive in our libraries than ever before. Childers notes that libraries must continue to stay up to date, saying that the library should be aggressive at adopting computer literacy, as well as that libraries should be able to keep up with technological changes. With this in mind, it is important for library users to be able to understand how to best use the technologies that are available to them. Doing so is what will allow users to gain access to the information available in the library, which is to the betterment of both the library and the users themselves. For example, case studies such as the ones detailed by Pun showcase means by which librarians and users can utilize new information tools in exciting new contexts, such as exploring the history of Asian and European restaurant menus from as far back as the 1800s. Interactive learning allows users to learn while also actively engaging with the materials in front of them. These possibilities, however, are not fully open to all groups of people. Low-income areas, rural populations, and populations with limited internet access in particular, may not be able to utilize these newer technologies in their everyday lives. Older users as well, who may have never utilized these tools for the majority of their lives, are also affected by these issues. Cullen notes that these groups have increased difficulty obtaining information. As such, these groups have trouble learning new technologies, meaning they are unable to fully integrate into a modern-day library environment. If the user cannot utilize the library's tools, then the library cannot be of much use to them. This is of concern to libraries in low-income and remote areas that wish to fulfill the needs of their users. Because it is a library's duty to meet the needs of as many user groups as possible, a library should be able to assist users with limited digital skills. These are people who may have the capacity to learn the tools of the modern-day library environment, but have not had the opportunity to do so. It is good, then, that there are solutions and means by which a library could assist these individuals. The Internet and the World Wide Web offers an amount of information that the users might find overwhelming. They may not be familiar to the different buttons, shortcuts, and icons that are placed on web pages. Solutions that have been offered to make web pages less intimidating for digitally inexperienced users include making web pages simpler, user-friendly, and easily accessible. The simplification of web pages can be done through many small improvements. The number of links and graphics present should be minimized. If they are used, these features should be properly labeled with clear instructions. Additionally, web pages may contain arrow icons to direct user navigation easily. Libraries can also include labels that will be easily understood by those without digital literacy skills. These labels must also be unobtrusive so that they are not bothering those who are digitally proficient. Therefore, a good balance between explanatory language on a web page and streamlined design needs to be struck. The use of natural language or relatively unrestricted controlled vocabularies may aid users with low exposure to digital catalogs. Those who are not familiar with using digital technologies may also be unfamiliar with controlled vocabularies. Hence, natural language may be the appropriate vocabulary to use in the system. However, to ensure precision in searching, adding some controlled vocabularies may help. Once again, a balance and a duality must be struck. As Marzuko and Elliott stated, information and digital literacy is a constellation of life skills that are necessary for full participation in our information-rich society, including those capabilities that mean an individual is fit for living, learning, and working in digital society. The ability to locate, organize, understand, evaluate, analyze, and present digital information. As Marzuko and Elliott described, information literacy consists of necessary skills of acquiring new knowledge and data in our information-rich society. We live in a world that has become primarily digital, yet there are often users that are not as immersed in their knowledge of technology and how to effectively use it. There are many different user groups who are sometimes not well represented in the creation of digital systems. For the purpose of our presentation, we chose to focus on a few user groups who may struggle operating these systems due to a lack of digital literacy knowledge. This lack of digital literacy skills is caused by a variety of underlying factors that will be discussed more in depth. One group who may have difficulty operating an informational system due to a lack of experience with digital literacy is senior citizens. This is more than likely due to a lack of exposure to basic and formal computer usage until later in their lives. This could then be translated to seniors having trouble navigating through an information organization system for the data they are interested in. With struggling to develop a basic level of computer knowledge, they may certainly face difficulties using an opaque system, either online or offline. As stated by Johnson, a number of web accessibility studies have identified elderly web users as a group who are likely to find the use of the web difficult or impossible due to usability issues. Barriers arise due to the elderly users generally having less PC and web experience than those who are younger and due to general impairments brought about by aging. With the identification of barriers present for elderly users, it is important to note where they may struggle to effectively use and interpret a digital system. One possible issue with this navigation could come from the overall design. Senior citizens may have difficulty using the different aspects of the search interface. This could also involve locating the basic search features to operating a formal website structure. They may also struggle or even omit the option for narrowing their search through selecting different terminology, or using advanced narrowing search options. They may also struggle generating and using controlled vocabulary for their queries along with the different search fields. Senior citizens have not had a lot of experience constructing formal queries and how to attain the results they are interested in, especially in a digital format. The following graph provided by the Pew Research Center shows the amount of computer and internet usage by patrons in different age groups. As you can see, only around 60% of users in the 65 or older age have consistent access to a computer. This means that 40% of users are not using the computer or internet on a regular schedule. The 40% of users would probably experience some degree of difficulty using a formal system due to a lack of basic computer usage. Users under the age of 65 were ranking at around 80% or higher having daily access to their own personal computer, which one would assume means they have a higher level skill set in using a digital system. To combat these issues, one solution may be to provide computer and database instructional opportunities held by local public libraries to educate those who may need more knowledge about how to effectively operate systems like an OPAC. It is also important to find ways to keep the search interface simple and uncluttered. By eliminating things that are not necessary and sticking to the basics both in design and content, senior citizens will be able to focus on what they need in order to be successful. Another solution is to keep the design of the interface friendly for those senior citizen users. The font should be larger and clearer, and the basic functions should be clear and simple to use. By doing this, users will be more motivated to use the system on a more consistent basis. Another user group who may be included in lacking in digital literacy skills are those who have a significant gap in their academic education. This could include people who have failed to finish high school, or those who have never sought a college education. Those that have a gap in this type of education may have trouble using a formal digital information system, and may also lack the skills of producing controlled vocabulary. Users who lack an education in a college setting may be used to acquiring information from a search engine instead. These days, search engines like Google and Bing are more popular with users. The informal nature of these search engines can have possible negative repercussions for those who may be inexperienced using a formal system. Those with limited academic education may struggle in the use of controlled vocabularies. Instead, those individuals are used to a more natural language approach, especially with their steady usage of search engines. Individuals who have gaps in their education may also struggle with the ability to sort and evaluate their queries' results. Some of these evaluation criteria could include relevancy, currency, authority, and purpose. Users with limited education may experience difficulty refining and editing a search attempt to produce a higher precision level of results. The following graph from Pew Research Center shows the effect of academic exposure on overall computer and internet usage. Based on this graph, 70% of users who have less than a high school diploma own and use a computer on a consistent basis. This means that 30% of users do not. Also, the graph shows that 75% of users with a high school diploma use a computer on a consistent basis. This means that 25% of users with a high school diploma do not. This also means that anywhere from 20 to 25% of users with a lower level of education do not use a computer on a consistent basis. These users may end up having difficulty using a formal information system if they do not have the opportunities to use a computer for basic uses. A lack of formal education may also cause them to have difficulty producing terminology and conducting search strategies to produce a high level of precision and recall in their results. One possible solution to represent these individuals is to include the use of natural language and to limit fields in the search interface. This will allow users to include terminology that is more natural to produce. By avoiding complex terminology in the results or search structure, users will be able to interpret their query results. Also, users in this group may benefit from the inclusion of typical search engines in the interface of the system. This may allow users to feel more comfortable when using a formal setup like an OPAC. A different user group that may struggle with digital literacy are those from different community settings. Based on Pew Research Center's data, people who live in a rural setting are less likely to have access to the internet. This lack of access may cause users to be unfamiliar on how to use a formal digital system. Users who live in a rural setting may have trouble using a formal information system due to a lack of daily exposure in computer and internet usage. This may also be due to a lack of library structures in their small rural communities. This also means that users may have limited opportunities for instructional seminars for those who may need extra assistance. Based on the data from Pew Research Center, around 77% of users who live in a rural setting have daily access to a computer and the internet. This means that 23% of rural users may not have the same opportunities to use a computer in terms of a formal system. Some possible solutions to represent rural users is to include web-based tutorials on how to use a formal search interface. This will allow users an educational opportunity, regardless of whether or not there is a library in their area. Another solution is to provide simple terminology, and to limit fields for those who may not be familiar with complex search methods. It should also be noted that users with low exposure to digital catalogs may be unfamiliar with controlled vocabulary, even more so than the general user. Natural language is more understandable, and perhaps more beneficial to this user group. Beside the larger group of users who have a difficult time using web tools due to a lack of training or experience, like senior citizens, non-academics, and rural residents, are those who access the web through mobile devices. Some users in this group may exclusively access the web in this fashion, while others may primarily use this method, or just occasionally use this method. There will be a further breakdown of mobile device users later in this presentation. For now, let these statistics sink in. In 2013, 56% of Americans owned a smartphone. The Pew Research Center Internet Project Survey reports that the following year, 83% of Americans aged 18 to 29 owned a smartphone. Of this group, 34% used their mobile devices as their primary access point to the web. Some mobile web users may have experience accessing the web through a desktop computer, but as it stands, at their point of need only have access to the web through a mobile device. Since many mobile devices may still be considered cutting edge, users may find new difficulties in accessing library web tools through these devices, even if they have previously experienced using the web through other hardware. Mobile adapted traditional library services, like catalog access, are often slow in development, lagging behind the development of hardware, although many of the top 100 research institutions are currently offering many mobile services. As a side note, among the top 100 research institutions, several libraries are now working on responsive web design, so that the same web page with the same content may be viewed across devices without the need for a separate mobile site. This option is the best for users since it allows them to see all of the same content, regardless of their point of access. However, concerns are raised if having all the same content on a tiny screen would be of much use for some mobile users who are not used to the same content on a desktop-sized screen. Perhaps the rise of the phablet, a device halfway between the size of a smartphone and a tablet, will now curb these issues for the next section of mobile users up in this discussion. The group of users who may benefit the most from the phablet are those who have technologically leapfrogged from no computer access to smartphones, skipping the expensive step of purchasing home internet access through a traditional internet service provider, and buying more expensive devices like desktop computers. We may stereotype smartphone users as wealthy members of our communities, but, in fact, these microcomputers are becoming more ubiquitous among low-income groups due to this leapfrogging phenomenon. Some users may only have access to the web through smartphone data plans, rather than the more wealthy user who can afford to purchase and use multiple devices to access the web. Keep in mind that the use of multiple devices often entails the purchase of internet service from a traditional internet service provider, as well as the purchase of the hardware. With the growing and ongoing price tag of home or even mobile hotspot internet service, in addition to hardware costs and a data plan, it is easy to imagine why leapfrogging is appealing. You may never think of a low-income person with a great smartphone negatively again, since they are actually being financially savvy by making this object their primary computer. Users may have difficulty accessing web pages originally designed for desktop computer capabilities due to the exclusion of newer mobile technologies. This is not a problem with the user. Rather, it is a problem with library infrastructure and web design lacking behind technological adoption trends of library user groups. Yelton notes that, in a world where online interfaces and library services are designed desktop first, mobile later, maybe never, these patrons are shut out of increasingly important ways to participate in political, civic, and cultural life. Beside the problems facing specifically technology leapfrogging mobile users, there are severe limitations to browsing that can occur from both sets of mobile users, those with and without access to the web through a desktop computer. Access to the web via mobile device is convenient, but users are at the mercy of their device's ability to connect to data networks, their ability to pay for the data, and also the limited processing power of these compact devices. While these may be more dire, ongoing limitations for the leapfrogging users, the limitations will also be a temporary burden for the student who is trying to get those last few articles for a paper in a half-panic during finals week, when all of the on-campus computers are taken, and she has left her laptop at home, or even has had her laptop fried. Most importantly, perhaps, is the limitation that mobile devices only have small screens, often touch-based, which makes manipulation of desktop-designed web pages very difficult. Solutions to the problems faced by mobile users hinge upon the availability of discovery tools that combine a fully pre-indexed library collection, across all source types, licensed, owned, etc., with a robust search interface making use of all facets. If users are able to search all parts of the catalog through one interface, rather than entering several different databases for different kinds of collections, valuable time, user frustration, and most importantly, user data are saved. If a discovery tool that combines the robust search options of faceted searching and simple all-in-one searching is not possible for your library, it is best to have both federated searching and traditional catalog search available. This way, users of all kinds can find what they need, inexperienced and expert searchers alike, regardless of the device they are using to access the catalog. Still, there remains some debate as to whether maintenance of both types of search tools is cost-effective. In order to optimize library holdings discovery tools for mobile service users, it is important to consider the following: screen real estate and web feature pliability, as well as the time and frustration and level of the user. These last two considerations are ever more important if we turn our eyes to data rates for mobile phone plans. All of these considerations can be addressed by ensuring the simplicity and intuitive structure of a facet-based discovery tool. Simplicity, and appeals to user intuition, can be achieved through the intelligibility of facet labels, use of facets as a key component in design by making them as obvious so that they can't be ignored by users, and personalization of text that instructs the user. An example of a personalized text is one that uses pronouns such as, "Choose topics from the list to narrow your search." Facets provided to the mobile library discovery tool user should be made up of natural language that reflects what is used in commercial websites such as Lowe's, Target, and Home Depot, according to Nelson and Turney. Even if library metadata is not changed internally to reflect users' natural language, the simplification of facets provided to users first searching on the front end of a library's collection will save the time, frustration, and financial resources of the mobile user. In the long term, the attention paid to mobile users will make the library's resources more accessible to all users. This concept is similar to a more familiar one. If you make services more accessible to users who have disabilities, you make them more accessible and beneficial for everyone. Already, you are likely noticing some similar needs, solutions, and improvements to library web services across the user groups we have mentioned, even though these groups are relatively diverse. Perhaps metadata will eventually conform more closely to intuitive natural language on the back end in the future as well. Another improvement that could help both those accessing the web through a mobile device and those with low digital literacy skills is to open the OPAC to indexing by popular search engines. One of the first web skills taught to a new user is how to use a search engine. If library materials were indexed by these go-to tools easily understood by new users, then they would be far more discoverable for this population. However, this kind of step would be very controversial, considering the licensing and ownership questions that might arise during a project of this kind. A good compromise would be to create search interfaces within the library website that mimic popular search engines, even if they aren't based on the same concepts. Over the course of this discussion, you may have made some connections between the problems suffered by the specific user groups we have focused on: senior citizens, non-academics, rural residents, and a variety of mobile users. You have probably also seen the alignment between the solutions that can be put in place to help all of these diverse users access information through our systems. Some common solutions were the use of natural or intuitive language, simple and uncluttered search interfaces designed to look like a popular search engine, all-in-one searching capability, personalized language directing the user to search features, emphasis in the design on facets on narrowing limiters, or even opening OPAC records to indexing by search engine bots. As you can see, these type of improvements will help the diverse group of users who have digital impediments to accessing library resources, but they will also make our resources more accessible for all of our users, making their implementation an all-around win. Thank you for watching our presentation.